All right, what's up, everybody? This is going to be week 3 of the Dojo series on the Zerg side. Hopefully you guys have been keeping up with these things. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of stuff to do on your own, especially just these homework. It's kind of cumbersome to do these single player games and logging your metrics and whatnots. But, again, I'm just trying to teach for that approach, right? Just hammering the approach in you that this is just how you improve, right? You just have to understand what you're going for, because again, if you don't know what you're doing against nobody, how are you going to figure it out when you actually play an opponent, right? So whether you use it on this build or another build, I just kind of encourage you to get the metrics from like a pro replay or a high level player to just kind of execute the build and then compare that on your own and then compare that against other players. So, all right, let's recap a little bit. I had a live session going over some of these builds on Twitch a couple days ago. I had some of the students play each other. I kind of played against them in just testing whether or not the people are actually doing the assignments, and it looked really good. It looked very promising, right? Like you see like 16, 17, 1800 level players like executing build orders as though they're like 2200, and it's looking beautiful, right? So that's a good first sign that you can actually execute it against an opponent. Obviously as the game progresses it slowly starts to fall apart, but that's okay. With repetition it starts to get more natural, and as you play more games you just start to understand the variance as you just kind of navigate the decision tree. So last time we stopped right at around 9:30. 9:30 was kind of like that point. 7:30 to 9:30 is like that point where it's like, okay, how you execute in those 2 minutes against your opponent is going to determine how you're going to play in the rest of the game, right? So what we wanted to do was we talked about getting our Hydras to block the initial push against a Zealot Corsair push at around 7:30, right? Upon blocking it, I said we should make a round of drones to get from 30 to around 45. Okay, so that's a really important number. Okay, maybe if you get to like 42, 43, that's okay. You might miss a few. Maybe you take some damage from the Protoss. It's okay, right? But important thing is you should take a round of drones from your 5 hatcheries, get to that 45, and then we also discussed maybe we should try to get that hatchery as soon as possible at the 4th base, okay? If you're going to be a little greedy, you can get it earlier. As long as you get it before 10 minutes, I think that's okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to just move forward to around 13 minutes, 9:30 to 13 minutes, okay? So really from this point on, it's going to be just a lot of macroing, right? So I was going to budget 4 videos on just the build order, but I realized 9:30 to 12:30, it's a little bit more executional than it is kind of build order focused, but I will still leave a couple of metrics because these metrics are still going to be important and kind of good counters in your head just to kind of like make sure you're following as you're going through this build and also other builds, right? Because some of these metrics are also going to apply to other builds, maybe not like at the same exact time, but conceptually, okay? So let's remember what happened, right? I think the important thing here is, I'm assuming my opponent here is at the top left, it's Protoss opponent. I've got double upgrades started, so if you see like my +1 finished around like, 9:15 or something, based off of when I started it, I have double upgrades on the way. 4 Hatchery. My lurker aspect is almost done, and this was one of the key metrics I wanted you guys to do, right? You want to try to get that done by like 9:40-ish. 9 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a little late, but try to get that before 10 minutes so that it really just enables you to make lurkers to go into your next drone cycle, right? Because 45 is a good solid number for 3 bases, but if you really want to pump up to that 4th base, to drone that 4th base, you have to add 10 more and you got to go to 55. So 55 is really that magic number that you want to get to. Obviously if you can go more, then you go for it, but like that starts becoming a little bit of an overkill. Like, you might be clowning on your opponent at that point. So notice that the second I get my lurkers and I spread them, I start making a round of drones, and I directly send these drones to the 4th base to saturate them, right? So we got 6 patches in this one, roughly 1.5 per patch. So That's going to be about like 10 or 11 drones here, and that's going to get us right to that 55. So notice I got right to 55 super fast. I got 57 because I'm going to make a couple extra hatcheries. And that's another thing you have to kind of tune in your head, right? If you want to go 5 hatch Hydra, you need 30 drones on 3 bases, correct? That's 1 drone per patch. If you want to saturate 3 bases, that's 45. And then if you want to saturate 4 bases, that's 55. Because just kind of happen in your head, right? So even if you're not playing this build, even if you are playing some wacko build against someone opening scouts, and then all of a sudden you're on like 4 bases, it's a good exercise to just kind of see, do I have roughly 55 drones? Are they saturated on each of the bases? If not, that's the goal that you should get, if you can, of course. You don't want to die getting it, but at the same time, because we have lurkers out, 10 minutes is not a time where they can come and kill you, especially if they open Corsairs. So if you have lurkers, Zealot High Templar can't do anything to you. You just need to make sure you're kind of positioned correctly. And you want to add a couple of hatcheries to support this production, right? So we went from 6 hatcheries to 8 hatcheries, and I actually think that you can support 9 hatcheries. And this might be one mistake, right? Because if you make the 4th base and you saturate to 55, you're going to run into a mineral issue if you don't make 2 additional hatcheries immediately, okay? Because if you only have 6 hatcheries on 55 drones, you can't spend all your money, and you're going to be like floating 3,000 minerals very soon. So once you hit that 55, I like to make the Queen's Nest usually when the Protoss takes their 3rd base. So it could be like around 10 minutes, 10:30. I think my Queen's Nest was a little bit later here. But any time in that range between 10 to 10:30, if you want to play Hive, is a nice time to get it. And if not, you could just play a massive Hydra lurker style, but that's going to require you to be very proactive on the map. So these days, the meta is kind of favoring more of like that Hydra heavy style where you just kind of battle Protoss in the middle. But it is hard to pull off. But if that suits your style, go for it. If not, just go for that Queen's Nest, get that tech. And from this point on, you basically want to be optimizing for a push coming at around 11:30. But more likely 12. Depends on how good the Protoss is. If they're trying to push really, really soon, they'll come right at around 11:30. And this is also pre-2-1 upgrades from this build, right? Or maybe 2-0 upgrades. The 2-1 upgrades are going to hit like right after 12 minutes. And their attacks also going to come before Hive, right? So even if I got the Queen's Nest before that, the Protoss angle can come punish you right before Defilers and Crackling start to come out, and right before your second upgrades also come out as well. So start making units once you get that 5th hatchery. I'm sorry, the 55 drones. And from here, it's really straightforward. You just macro, okay? Just macro. And it's super important for the map that you're on to study where you should plant your lurker fields. They should never be all in one area unless the map is really funky. So notice I kind of have like this lurker spread. I have like that initial wall. I have an initial wall up here. And you just have to be ready to reposition your units in the case that they come. Okay. Let me just pause here for a little bit. So I talked a little bit about the builds. There wasn't a whole lot to go to except for the 55 drones, the 2-1 upgrades, the Queen's Nest, and then the additional 2 more hatcheries. I would actually push you to go for 9 hatcheries. I think in this game I only get 8, but I think 9 is definitely doable. I do get the 9, but I take it at the 3 o'clock base to expand. And again, I'm not playing against anyone. I would only recommend expanding to your 5th base if you feel like you're really ahead and you can support it. But obviously this is not a requirement, and this is probably a pretty optimistic 5th base. So let me just pause there and talk a little bit about just some more, I guess, tactics, right? It just sounds like to me we're sitting here on this base. Let's start to like think about the Protoss angle a little bit, right? So like usually if they're going for a 2 base all in, right around now they'll be attacking and they'll be stuck on 2 bases. But I think it's really important as a Zerg to always scout to see whether or not that 3rd base is being built or not, okay? Here's the reason why. Usually at around like that 11-minute mark, you want to just send like a Zergling or something up there, whether it's at the 12 o'clock or at the mineral only, wherever they take their third base, right? Just check to see that it exists or they intend on taking that base. If they do take that base, they might wait until like their cannons are up before they attack you, so you have a little bit more time. But let me say this. If the Protoss is not taking their third base and they're going for a giant push on 2 bases only, I would actually encourage you to not make this round of drones, or if you are making the round of drones, like just stop as soon as you recognize that there is no nothing coming. Now, if you could get the round of drones because you're ahead or you're super on top of your build, that's okay. But if you notice that they're going to go for a gigantic push without a third base, it's better for you to take the third base and not really saturate it and just make units right away, okay? Does that make sense? So if they take the third base, go ahead and for sure take your 55. But if they don't take it, or you scout it a little bit later that they're not taking it, start your unit production fast. Make sure you get your Hydras and your Lurkers. You want to have a good like unit composition. I wouldn't overmake Lurkers such that you don't have any Hydras, but don't undermake the Lurkers as well. So you kind of just want to have like a decent number. Don't worry about getting, make sure you maybe even just throw in some Zerglings. The Lings aren't really strong against like +2 armor these days, but the Zerglings help to buffer against the goons as they're trying to barrel in, right? So the kind of like the micro tactics is like you want to make sure your rally points are behind your Lurkers. So for example, like here I have some units. Make sure they're like kind of back there. And as they're pushing forward, you want to just throw like little guerrilla, like, you know, 5 Zerglings and a Hydra at a time, like up here and then down here, so that they can't get effective storms off. Or you can take like a group of Hydras, like maybe 6 or 7, and try to snipe their observers. So sniping observers, you know, the observer is kind of like that Achilles heel in the army. So if you can get it, go for it. If not, if you're just defending against the Goon High Templar, then you just toss a few Lings at a time, okay? And that's what a good Protoss would do. They'll just try to storm first before they barrel in. But if they barrel in with Zealots first, that's a really noob move. And if that's the case, then yeah, you just throw units at it and you just try to dodge storms, but then like they'll be eating a lot of Lurker Spines when they do that. So usually the Protoss wants to save their Zealots, and the Zealots will barrel in after the Goon High Templar barrels down that first or second layer of Lurkers, okay? So because this is kind of like the last video on the actual build, what I would recommend, and again, like I'll just focus on the build for now, focusing on the scouting if you're a little lower player, little lower level player, sorry. But, you know, let's say you're like in this nice comfortable position and you have like 140 plus supply like at 1230. That means you're like macroing like a pro, okay? The question then becomes, like, you have all these units, what should you do with them? Well, if you have the capacity, and this is something for you to work towards if you're a better player, throw your Lings around, snipe High Templars, maybe even use 2 groups of Lings. And again, this is a higher level move, just kind of like surveying the map, like drag the Protoss army one way, and then from behind you like take a group of Hydra Ling and just like snipe 2 High Templar and just run away, right? Those are super effective ways that you can gain value while you're sitting, right? Because when you're sitting, this is the best position for Zerg. When you are sitting on your ass and you have Lurkers and you have like 150 plus supply and Protoss has no easy way to bust you, that's a good situation to be in. And it's a great way for you to get effective trades on your Lings around the map, right? So you can snipe High Templars, deny their 3rd and 4th base, right? So if they get a 3rd base, great. But sometimes you can even counterattack the 3rd base with like 2 groups of Ling Hydra. Just kind of like go like sneak all the way around, and when they move out, just go and just like target fire it, and then boom, it's dead, right? If they're trying to take a 4th base behind too, throw just like 12 Lings over to the corner and then just send it up to the 12 o'clock base whenever you have time. Just one click, right? So those are the kinds of things that you want to do, especially as you move into the late game. I don't want to go too much into late game tactics because there's a lot to talk about, but I would say like you want to take your 5th base either like the main of another base, like over here. That's totally fine, and then you just kind of hold that ramp. Or you can play this more consolidated style where you take the corner over here. And this is kind of more of like a battle Zerg. You know, if you want to do this, like you take the corner, you're trying to take fights and you want to trade with your fights rather than starving your opponent out. But if you want to take this base and you just nidus and you defend, and then you take this base and you split the map, that style you can play a little bit more defensively, and then just the name of the game is just defending and denying your opponent's base at the corner, right? So you just deny them from getting into the main base while you hold your bases, and you just plague Dark Swarm, you just play defensively, and it just really tilts the hell out of Protoss. So that's what's going to be it for just like the builds. I'll have the metrics inside the assignments, and then moving forward, I'm just going to start playing a little bit. You know, we're going to have a little bit more fun with this because we've been working on this build for a long time, and it's just one build for like 3 weeks, and I know it gets a little boring. But here's what we're going to do. Moving forward for the next videos, I'm going to start sharing a little bit more variations, right? I mean, we learned the 5 Hatch Hydra all-in version, right? And hopefully you've had some success with that. But we're going to start learning, how do I apply this structure to come up with new builds, right? You know, how do I make these builds like not completely garbage by applying the same approach? You know, maybe sticking to similar benchmarks, but being a little bit more creative, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't all want to do the same build. So that's what we're going to kind of go over the next few weeks. It's going to be builds, it's going to be a little bit more tactical, and it's going to be a little bit more response driven. So maybe instead of just focusing on one build, I can just look at a couple of different responses that you might go into. But again, if you have any feedback on what it is that you guys are looking for, make sure you let me know in Discord or just even in the comments. I know one big area that a lot of Zergs are asking for are like how do you play against Gateway Expand, right? That's a video that I'm going to work on, but it's a hard video because it's just not structured at all, but hopefully I can pack as much content as I can in that one video. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, see you next time.